Dr. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her brow as she studied the readings on her quantum scanner for the third time. The Brazilian rainforest's oppressive humidity made everything more difficult, but these numbers couldn't be right. Energy patterns like these didn't occur naturally, and they certainly shouldn't be emanating from beneath 200 feet of dense vegetation. Dr. Williams, she called out to her colleague, who was taking soil samples nearby. Can you verify something for me? James Williams, a geophysicist with 20 years of field experience, carefully placed his samples in their container before making his way over. His weathered face creased with concern as he looked at the scanner's display. That's impossible, he muttered, adjusting his glasses. These readings suggest a power source, but it's using a form of energy we've never encountered before. The research team had been in the Amazon for 6 weeks, investigating unusual geological formations identified by satellite imagery. The Brazilian government had granted them exclusive access to this previously unexplored region after their initial surveys suggested the presence of rare earth elements. What they'd found instead defied explanation. Base camp, this is Chen, Sarah spoke into her comm unit. We need the full team out here. Grid coordinate Echo 7. And bring the heavy scanning equipment. Within an hour, the clearing had transformed into a hub of activity. 24 of Earth's brightest scientists worked methodically, setting up sophisticated sensing equipment around the perimeter of the energy signature. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the team's xenoarchaeologist, studied the terrain with growing excitement. Look at the root patterns, she pointed out. They're not random. There's a geometric precision to their layout that suggests artificial manipulation. Something beneath us has been influencing the forest's growth for a very long time. As if in response to her words, the quantum scanner's readings suddenly spiked. A low vibration rumbled through the ground, sending birds scattering from the canopy above. The team watched in amazement as a section of forest floor began to sink and slide away, revealing a metallic surface underneath the centuries of accumulated soil and vegetation. Everyone back. Dr. Chen ordered, though curiosity warred with caution in her voice. The opening widened to reveal a descending pathway, its walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Dr. Rodriguez approached the entrance, her hand hovering over the surface. These markings, they're unlike anything in our archaeological records. This isn't human construction, and it predates any known Earth civilization by orders of magnitude. The team's security consultant, Major David Torres, stepped forward with his scanner. No radiation, no toxic emissions. The air coming from inside is actually cleaner than out here. He paused, checking another reading. But there's definitely power running through these walls. Whatever this place is, it's active. Dr. Chen made a decision. We need to inform the Brazilian authorities and our oversight committee, but we can't risk losing access to this site. Major Torres, establish a secure perimeter. Dr. Williams, begin setting up the mobile lab. Dr. Rodriguez, start documenting everything. We're looking at the greatest discovery in human history, and we need to handle it right. As the team mobilized, none of them noticed the subtle changes taking place in the forest around them. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their leaves turning to track the movement of the humans below. Deep underground, ancient systems began to wake, running through protocols established millennia ago. Humanity had finally found what had been waiting for them, but they weren't the only ones who'd noticed the activation of the long-dormant facility. High above Earth's atmosphere, a signal began its journey into deep space. After 50,000 years of silence, the beacon was active again. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, something received the message and changed course. The jungle had kept it secret for countless generations, but now the time had come. Humanity's greatest test was about to begin, and the outcome would determine not just their fate, but the legacy of a civilization that had seen them coming long ago. Dr. Chen looked up at the darkening sky, an inexplicable shiver running down her spine despite the tropical heat. She couldn't know it yet, but she and her team stood at the threshold of a discovery that would change everything. The real question wasn't what they would find inside the ancient structure, but whether humanity was ready for what would find them. The artificial lights cast long shadows through the ancient corridors as Dr. Chen's team made their way deeper into the facility. 3 days had passed since their initial discovery, and each hour brought new mysteries. Dr. Rodriguez traced her fingers along the shifting symbols that lined the walls, their subtle luminescence responding to her touch. The entire structure seems to be one interconnected system, she said, consulting her tablet. These markings aren't just decorative, they're a form of interactive interface. The question is, what are they trying to tell us? Major Torres led the way, his practiced eye scanning for potential hazards. The facility had proven remarkably well preserved, its corridors free of the decay one might expect after millennia of abandonment. If anything, it seemed to be growing more active with each passing hour. Dr. Chen, you need to see this, Dr. Williams called from an adjacent chamber. The team followed his voice into a vast circular room. The walls were lined with what appeared to be suspended animation pods, each large enough to hold a being considerably larger than a human. All were empty. Look at the design, Dr. Chen said, examining the nearest pod. These weren't built for humans, but they're perfectly preserved. Whatever species created this place, they were humanoid, but much larger than us. A sudden tremor ran through the facility, causing everyone to freeze. The lights in the pods pulsed in sequence, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the room. Three-dimensional star charts filled the air around them, showing what appeared to be movement patterns across vast distances of space. It's a warning system, Dr. Rodriguez breathed, her eyes wide. The facility isn't just a bunker or research station, it's a watchtower. Before she could elaborate, their comms crackled to life with an urgent message from the surface team. Dr. Chen, we're picking up massive gravitational distortions in high orbit. Something big just dropped out of FTL travel, and it's not one of ours. The holographic display shifted, showing a real-time view of Earth's orbit. A massive vessel, easily the size of a small city, had appeared. Its design was organic and predatory, like a deep-sea creature rendered in metal and shadow. Security breach detected, a synthetic voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in perfect English. Orbital defense protocols initiating. Human presence acknowledged. Analyzing threat response capabilities. Dr. Chen's mind raced. The facility wasn't just recognizing their presence, it was adapting to them, learning their language, assessing their civilization. Everyone, stay calm. This is what we've been preparing for. First contact protocols are now in effect. But this wasn't the kind of first contact anyone had imagined. The alien ship above had begun deploying smaller craft, their trajectory aimed directly at the facility's location. The holographic display tagged them with pulsing red markers. Major Torres, get our people into defensive positions, Dr. Chen ordered. Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Williams, we need to understand this interface system now. Whatever this facility is, it chose to reveal itself to us for a reason. As if in response to her words, new symbols appeared on the walls, these ones urgently pulsing with crimson light. Dr. Rodriguez's face paled as she interpreted them. They're coming back, she whispered. The beings this facility was built to warn against, they've returned. And we just lit up the biggest beacon imaginable. The synthetic voice spoke again, this time with an urgency that seemed almost human. Attention Earth scientists, this facility exists to prevent the harvest. Your species has been monitored since its inception. The harvesters return every 50,000 years to collect advanced civilizations. You have activated the defense network ahead of schedule. Prepare for immediate combat operations. The floor beneath them hummed with awakening power. Panels slid away to reveal equipment bays filled with technology beyond human understanding. The facility wasn't just a watchtower, it was an armory, left behind by an ancient race that had faced this threat before. Dr. Chen looked at her team, seeing the same mix of fear and determination in their eyes that she felt herself. They had uncovered something momentous, but they had also triggered a chain of events that humanity might not be ready for. The price of their curiosity would be high, but the cost of failure would be extinction. Above them, the alien ships entered the atmosphere, their intent clear. Humanity's greatest test was beginning, and the jungle's ancient guardians were awakening to stand with them. The only question was, would it be enough? The jungle trembled as the first alien drop ships pierced the canopy. Dr. Chen watched from the facility's command center as holographic displays tracked their descent. The ancient defense system had sealed most of the structure, transforming what had appeared to be decorative elements into hardened battle stations. Multiple hostile entities detected, the facility's AI announced. Initiating preliminary defense measures. Warning, full system activation requires authorized operator. Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically at one of the transformed wall panels, its symbols now forming distinct command interfaces. The facility wants to interface with us, she called out. It's not just translating anymore, it's trying to teach us how to use it. Major Torres coordinated with the surface security teams through his tactical display. We've got Brazilian special forces inbound, but they're 20 minutes out. Those ships will be on us in 5. The first impact shook the facility. Above ground, the hostile aliens, the harvesters, as the facility called them, were deploying ground forces. Their forms were visible through the surveillance systems, tall, insectoid creatures wrapped in biomechanical armor, moving with lethal precision through the underbrush. Dr. Chen. Dr. Williams called from another station. These readings suggest the facility's defensive capabilities are only at 12% power. Whatever the previous civilization was fighting, they took most of their weapons with them. Chen made a decision. Dr. Rodriguez, initiate the interface. Major Torres, get your people to fall back to the inner chambers. If we can't stop them up there, we'll need to hold them here. Rodriguez pressed her palm against the central console. Light spiraled up her arm as the facility began its integration sequence. Her eyes widened as information flooded her consciousness. It's incredible, she gasped. They didn't leave us weapons, they left us their knowledge. Everything they learned about the harvesters, every battle they fought. The facility shuddered again. Through the displays, they watched as the first wave of harvesters encountered the outer defensive perimeter. Ancient turrets emerged from the earth, firing streams of energy that cut through the aliens' armor. But there were so many of them, and the defenses were scattered, incomplete. They're hurting us, Major Torres realized, watching the tactical display. These aren't just raiders, they're coordinating, pushing us deeper into the facility. They want something in here. The AI's voice echoed through the chamber. Correct. The harvesters seek the core. They have pursued it across countless worlds, destroying civilizations to prevent its use. Your species was intended to inherit it, but you have found it too soon. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes snapped open, the interface temporarily broken. The core, it's not just a weapon. It's an evolutionary key. The ancient race, they didn't die out. They transformed themselves. And they've been guiding humanity's development, preparing us to do the same. Another explosion rocked the facility. The harvesters had breached the outer doors. Security feeds showed them advancing through the corridors, their weapons easily overwhelming the human defenders' conventional firearms. But they moved cautiously, as if afraid of what they might find. Dr. Chen, Rodriguez said urgently, the facility is showing me something. The harvesters, they're not invincible. They're afraid of change, of evolution itself. That's why they harvest advanced civilizations, to prevent them from following the path of the Guardians. Chen looked at the approaching enemy forces, then at her team. They had uncovered humanity's greatest discovery, and now they had to prevent it from becoming humanity's final chapter. Show me how to activate the core, she said to Rodriguez. If we can't stop them here, no one will. The facility's lights pulsed in response, and new chambers began to open deeper within the structure. The core was awakening, responding to humanity's desperate need. But as their team rushed to understand its power, the harvesters pressed their advance, drawing ever closer to the heart of humanity's last hope. Through the chaos, Dr. Chen caught glimpses of something extraordinary in the facility's data streams. The ancient guardians hadn't just been preparing humanity to fight, they had been preparing them to surpass even their own achievements. The question was whether they could unlock that potential before the harvesters reached them. In the corridors above, the sound of battle grew closer. Time was running out, and the price of failure would be the end of human civilization. But in that desperate hour, humanity was about to prove why the Guardians had chosen them as their heirs. The core chamber hummed with power as Dr. Chen and her team worked to understand its secrets. Holographic displays filled the air around them, showing the battle raging through the facility's upper levels. The harvesters were methodically disabling the ancient defenses, but they were paying for every inch of ground with heavy casualties. The interface is stabilizing, Dr. Rodriguez announced, her hands moving through the light patterns that surrounded her. The Guardians, they weren't just leaving us technology. They were leaving us a choice. Dr. Williams monitored the energy readings as the core pulsed with increasing intensity. Whatever this thing is, it's changing in response to our presence. It's like it's adapting to human neural patterns. Through the facility's communications network, they could hear the scattered reports from the defenders above. The Brazilian Special Forces had arrived, joining forces with Major Torres's security team. They were using the facility's architecture to their advantage, forcing the harvesters into bottlenecks where human ingenuity could overcome alien technology. "They're buying us time," Chen said, studying the tactical displays. "But we need to understand what the core actually does." "Dr. Rodriguez, what else are you seeing in the interface?" Rodriguez's eyes were distant, seeing patterns in the data stream that only she could access. The Guardians faced the same choice we're facing now. The harvesters had almost wiped them out. But instead of building better weapons, they chose to change themselves. The core, it's a catalyst for directed evolution. The chamber shook as another explosion rocked the facility. The harvesters had breached another level, drawing closer to their position. But something was changing in the core's chamber. The walls themselves seemed to be shifting, responding to the humans' presence in ways they hadn't before. "Look at this," Dr. Williams called out, pointing to his readings. "The core isn't just affecting the facility, it's interfacing with our own biology. Our neural patterns are synchronizing with the defense systems." Chen felt it too, a subtle resonance, as if the facility itself was becoming an extension of their consciousness. The Guardians hadn't built a fortress, they had created a symbiotic system that could only be fully activated by a species that understood both technology and adaptation. "Multiple breaches on Level 3, the facility's AI announced. Harvester forces approaching core chamber. Critical decision point reached." Dr. Rodriguez's eyes snapped open. "I understand now. The harvesters don't just fear evolution, they fear cooperation. Every species they've encountered, they've found a way to turn them against each other. But humanity." She smiled. "We're different. We adapt, we work together, we thrive on diversity." The core's pulsing reached a crescendo as the first harvester weapons fire hit the chamber's outer doors. But something extraordinary was happening. The facility's systems were integrating with the defenders above, enhancing their capabilities. Human soldiers found themselves able to instinctively operate Guardian technology, their minds linked through the facility's network. "They're not just fighting better," Major Torres reported through the comm, "they're fighting together. The facility, it's connecting us somehow. We can anticipate each other's moves, coordinate without speaking." Dr. Chen watched as the tactical displays showed the tide beginning to turn. The harvesters' advantage in technology was being offset by humanity's newfound unity. The facility wasn't giving them weapons, it was giving them understanding. "The core is ready," Rodriguez announced. "But activation will change everything. Not just us, but all of humanity." The Guardians are offering us their legacy, but we have to choose to accept it. The chamber doors began to glow red as the Harvester's weapons worked to breach them. In moments, they would face humanity's ancient enemy directly. But they were no longer the same humans who had entered the facility days ago. They were becoming something more, not by abandoning their humanity, but by embracing its greatest strengths. Chen looked at her team, seeing in their eyes the same realization. The Guardians hadn't chosen humanity by accident. They had seen in them the potential to surpass the limitations that had forced their own transformation. The core wasn't a weapon to defeat the Harvesters, it was a key to unlock humanity's true potential. Together, Chen said, reaching for the core's activation interface. Her team joined her, their hands linking as the chamber filled with light. Above them, the battle reached its critical moment. Humanity was about to take its next great step forward, not through conquest, but through unity. The core began its final sequence as the chamber doors started to fail. The choice was made. The legacy of two worlds was about to become one. Light exploded from the core chamber as the doors finally gave way. The Harvesters burst through, their weapons ready, only to freeze at the sight before them. Dr. Chen and her team stood transformed, their bodies wreathed in shifting patterns of energy that mirrored the facility's ancient symbols. The core's activation had not changed them physically, instead, it had awakened something that had always been dormant within human DNA. The Guardian's final gift was not transformation, but revelation. "We see you now," Dr. Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of newfound understanding. "We see what you truly fear." Through the facility's network, she could feel the connected consciousness of every human defender, their minds linked but individual, unified but diverse. The Harvester forces recoiled as their weapons failed to penetrate the energy fields surrounding the humans. Their biomechanical armor, designed to resist conventional attacks, offered no protection against the power of activated human potential. Dr. Rodriguez, her mind still interfaced with the facility's databases, spoke next. "You've spent millennia preventing civilizations from reaching this point. Not because you fear their weapons, but because you fear their ability to change, to grow, to become more than the sum of their parts." Through their linked consciousness, the human defenders began to understand the true nature of their enemy. The Harvesters weren't conquerors, they were preservers, desperately trying to maintain a static, unchanging universe. They harvested advanced civilizations not for resources or territory, but to prevent the chaos of evolution and change. Humanity's greatest strength, Dr. Williams observed, watching as the energy patterns around them began to spread through the facility, isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to adapt, to embrace change, to find unity in our differences. Major Torres, leading the coordinated defense above, felt the change rippling through his forces. Each soldier remained individual, their unique perspectives and skills enhanced rather than subsumed by their connection. They fought not as a hive mind, but as a symphony of individual minds working in perfect harmony. The Harvesters launched a desperate final assault, but their attacks seemed to pass through the humans like light through crystal. The facility's defenses, fully awakened by humanity's activation of the core, began to pulse with renewed power. "You don't have to run," Dr. Chen called out to the retreating Harvesters. "You don't have to fear change. The Guardians left this gift not just for us, but for all species ready to take the next step. Even you." Some of the Harvesters hesitated, their weapons lowering. Through the facility's systems, the humans could sense confusion and uncertainty rippling through the alien ranks. For the first time in their long history of harvesting, they encountered something they couldn't simply destroy or contain. The core's energy continued to spread, reaching beyond the facility into the surrounding jungle. Plants and animals touched by its power didn't mutate or transform, instead, they seemed to achieve a kind of harmony, a balance that had always been possible but never realized. "This is what the Guardians understood," Dr. Rodriguez said, reading the final messages left in the facility's database. "Evolution isn't about becoming more powerful. It's about becoming more connected, more aware, more in tune with the universe and each other. The harvester ships in orbit began to retreat, their mission failed, their certainty shaken. But they left behind those who had chosen to stay, to learn, to understand this new path that humanity had unveiled. Dr. Chen stepped forward, the energy of the core flowing through her, connecting her to every living thing in the facility and beyond. The jungle kept this secret until we were ready, not ready to fight, but ready to understand. The Guardians didn't choose us because we were the strongest or the smartest. They chose us because we never stopped trying to be better, to learn, to grow. The facility, fully awakened, began to transform. Not into a weapon or a fortress, but into a beacon. A signal went out across the stars, not a warning, but an invitation. Humanity had proved themselves worthy not by defeating their enemy, but by offering them a chance to change. In the heart of the Amazon, surrounded by the ancient trees that had guarded this secret for so long, humanity took its first steps into a larger universe. Not as conquerors or defenders, but as guides for all species ready to embrace evolution's greatest gift, the power to choose what they would become. The core pulsed one final time, its light reaching toward the stars. The age of harvesting was over. The age of growth had begun.